Good afternoon, and welcome to the Nevada Caregivers Coalition's Conversations with Caregivers. This is our new monthly forum for caregivers to gain information and to share their concerns with us. The coalition works to create community awareness and to change public policy on the issues facing all caregivers and their families. I am Mary Liverati. I'm a member of the Nevada Caregivers Coalition, and I'm your host for this afternoon. We are a group of organizations, agencies, businesses, and individuals who provide care to individuals and loved ones across the lifespan. Every November, in celebration of National Family Caregiving Month, we host a recognition event for Nevada caregivers. The Nevada Caregivers Coalition has a website that we encourage you to visit at. Well, let me go back one second. I want to announce the Caregiver Recognition virtual event is scheduled for Thursday, November 18th, 2021. We're hoping that there may be a possibility that we can all get together this year, but if not, we will have a virtual event to recognize all those wonderful caregivers that are out there. So please save the date. Thank you. The Nevada Caregivers Coalition has a website that we encourage you to visit at nvcaregiverscoalition.com. On the website, you will find our blog, a calendar of events each month, and how to join our monthly meetings. We also have a Facebook page and encourage you to check it out. We meet on the second Wednesday of each month at 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Zoom to discuss current events facing caregivers. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, May 5th. If you're not a member, we encourage you to consider joining us. Simply fill out the information on our contact form, which is available on our website. A few reminders before we get started. Of course, Zoom etiquette requires us to mute ourselves unless you're asking a question. We'll have time for questions after our speaker concludes her remarks. But if you have a question in the meantime, please use the chat feature to ask your question or to make a comment. Please mute your microphone unless you are speaking or asking a question. We will be posting a number of resources in our chat today too. If you'd like to save the chat, simply click on the three gray dots that are at the top right corner of your chat box and click on Save Chat. If you have trouble with your internet connection, you may want to just leave the meeting and sign back in, and that should reconnect you hopefully in a better way. But if you have any other tech issues and you'd like some assistance, send a private chat message to Marsha O'Malley. She is with Mindful Media Services and is managing our meeting today. Thank you, Marsha. That's a great service to us. Our speaker today, we're very excited to hear from, is Cheryl Dinnell. She's the Executive Director of the Nevada Lifespan Respite Care Coalition. Cheryl is also a member of our coalition. She knows a little bit about the stress of caregiving, having raised 3 children, one of whom was born with an extremely rare genetic disorder. Over the years, she's learned a number of ways to manage her stress and has shared her tips with many other parents. Today, Cheryl is sharing her wisdom with us as she speaks about stress repressed, caregiver tips for everyday stress. Thank you, Cheryl, for being with us today. We look forward to your information and your presentation.
Sure enough, thank you. All right, let me go ahead and start with my slides. See if we can get those to connect. All right, yes, well, my name is Cheryl Dannell. I've been asked to lead the discussion today, partly based on my experience as a caregiver, and partly because of my work in the aging and disability field. Currently, I am the Executive Director of the Nevada Lifespan Respite Care Coalition and work on its mission to improve awareness of respite services and improve caregiver access to respite. And I'll explain how respite ties into during this presentation. Okay. I never thought I'd be working in this field at all until my youngest son was born with multiple disabilities. Here he is here, and he is my crash course in disability issues, as you might say. The last few years, I have started to take on some more caregiving roles with my parents. They're both in their 80s. And that makes me a compound caregiver because I take care of more than one person with disabilities or special health care needs. Both my parents are fall risk. My mom's had 2 major falls, one just a couple months ago, breaking her arms each time and hitting her head with swellings, bruises, blackened eyes each time. And Dad has had his own stumbles. He had a brain tumor that caused his stumbles, and he went through a sliding glass door and one of his stumbles. And he has had hearing loss, paralysis, and some trouble swallowing since his surgery. And he's still stumbling quite a bit. Both have trouble with their short-term memory and are struggling with things they used to take for granted, such as handling money and a big one, driving. This past year has been especially hard on both my son and my parents, as you might have expected. And then we're here. So when I was a new mom, I was given some advice by another parent, and her advice has served me well over the years. So this is slide 3. And she introduced me to a stress scale survey, and I'll make sure that a link to this is in the chat because maybe you'd like to look at it and take it sometime too. And she shared this stress inventory scale with me, this live stress inventory scale, and told me to add up my score for the past year. And I did, and had a score that was well over 300 points. And she said that at that level of stress, I would have noticeable physical, emotional, and mental changes. In other words, I would not really be myself, nor would my husband or my other children be operating as normally expected. And then it would take a full year for us to adjust to the changes that caused the stress. So she recommended that I give myself and others the chance to recover and let things settle down into our new normal. And I'm grateful for that insight and understanding of stress. I was able to hang on, survive, I've adjusted, and I've let my family have some time to adjust as well, whenever change stress has affected us since. And in doing that, I know I've developed some resiliency, that a capacity to recover more quickly from difficulties and having a toughness under trying circumstances. If you're feeling stressed, could just the total of all your change stress this year be a major reason? Think of our past year. COVID has certainly turned everyone's world upside down. So on the scale, death of a spouse had the highest score, 100 points. And I don't even want to think about how many people have had to deal with that this year. But positive things can cause stress as well, such as major holidays, Christmas, for example. We just get over the adjustment period of a year and we have the stress of Christmas repeat itself. But the cumulative effect of all the stress last year, changes in our social life, in our church activity, changes in schooling, work, finances, etc. Even if we didn't have to deal with a health impact like getting COVID, we still had many COVID-related stress changes. Even the major revisions of our personal habits, you'll see on this chart, cause stress. Hand washing, wearing masks, changes in how we shop, and the list goes on and on. Is it safe to say you are not yourself either this past year? So I've got a poll question. On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest, what is your current stress level? So Marcia's got the poll up there. So take a moment and answer the question, decide where you're at today, and then we'll look at the results.
There you go.
All right, 2, 3, 4, right there in the middle. Interesting. Okay. we'll think about that here in just a second. Stress changes cause a roller coaster of emotions. You probably relate. Strong, high emotion and low depressive emotions. And this is a chart of the emotional response during a disaster and recovery. And thinking of my year with COVID, I think I could probably almost tell you specific days I rode these highs and lows. Maybe, I don't know about you, but somehow knowing that I am reacting normally to stress is actually very comforting and reassuring to me. And I hope that gives you something to think about. And so if we're saying that COVID was our disaster and we're in the recovery part, and high and low, we're talking about in the scale, and we were 2, 3, and 4, I think it looks like we're pretty normal, doesn't it? That we're right there in that post-recovery period, right in those 2, 3s, and 4s. So anyway, before we go further, I want to make sure we are talking about stress related to caregiving and, you know, things that happen in the world around us. Some of us are type A personalities and we stress ourselves. Those who are B-type personalities might not be stressed as much by things because they're naturally good at going with the flow. We're not comparing how well we're feeling and, you know, how we're handling stress against those that don't seem to have any stress at all. Comparisons like that are things we made up in our own minds. So I want to make sure we're also not talking about living in toxic environments such as abuse, addiction, codependency, those things. You know, we can decide, well, we can always decide who we allow to be close to us, but it's not always easy to cut out the toxic parts of our lives. You can't change anybody. So the one you care for could be a difficult person. You could be the kindest, most generous, hardest working person on the planet, and toxic people will turn themselves inside out just trying to convince you that you're a liar, unfair, nasty, slacker, whatever. The reason that toxic people are often in crisis is because they're masterful at creating crisis. So be understanding, compassionate, kind, and respectful, but be all of those things to yourself first, and surround yourself with people who will give as much as you do. Okay, so about those noticeable physical, mental, emotional effects of stress. Do you relate to any of these images? Look at these for a moment. It's not an exhaustive list by any means, but I'd like to kind of do a fun quick poll in the chat. Which image do you relate to most? This is totally unscientific survey, and I know you probably feel all of these from moment to moment, but which one do you feel most right now? Which image could describe you? And I'll have Marcia put some descriptions for the images in the chat so you know what I'm referencing in the way of stress responses. You know, what type of stressor do you feel most right now? And then just fill in the chat what you think you relate to the most. Pushed, like you're pushing a never-ending burden, can't keep track of anything, feeling tossed from one challenge to the next, no energy or enthusiasm, just unable to shake, panic, and worry. Are you feeling emotional? A lot of tears, sleepless, restless, mental fatigue? Or you like that one picture, just free of stress, no uncomfortable demands on your time.
Well, no one is saying they're stress-free, Cheryl.
Okay,
I'll tell you that.
Stress-free.
We've got mental fatigue, brain fog, constantly tossed with challenge after challenge, unsettled, the boats and waves, rolling that boulder uphill, rocks, wide awake in bed. Yeah, we're quite the gang here.
Oh, good. After a year with COVID, you were all looking pretty normal. That's very good news. Okay, so I'm glad I'm not the only one who can relate to these. All right, you probably heard about how stressed out people have been during the COVID pandemic. Every mental health measure tracked has been off the charts this past year. Suicides have increased exponentially. This list shows the top suicide risks associated with each age group. I wonder how much suicide risk is brought on by change stress that people thought they would never recover from. But we need to recognize those risks in ourselves and others and just be present for each other. Life is hard and can feel overwhelming. So here's the different age breakdown. That youth one about contagion, that's about the suggestion that they ought to kill themselves. Yeah, and that thought has taken root in their brains. Anyway, many people deal with mental and emotional health conditions that are ongoing and require medications and other interventions to treat. So I don't want to belittle these challenges in any way. But the big increases like we've seen, I just feel that change stress is a huge factor. If you struggle with, or you know someone who struggles with thoughts of suicide, here's some resources that I want to share with you, and I'll have Marsha put them in the chat. And I know I'd be glad to talk with anyone who has these struggles. I'm not a mental health professional, but I would want to because I would want somebody to know that someone cares. So be glad to talk to anyone about these challenging times. Okay, today I just hope to excuse me, help you manage your stress better. And the CDC, that's the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, does have some guidelines for caregivers to help manage stress. And I'll also have these put in the chat. It may be easier to read them there, I hope. So here's the advice for caregivers. Get regular preventive care so your own health stays good. Get enough rest. Get regular exercise. Nurture your social relationships. Get help when you need it. All good advice, right? But I look at this list and I get a little frustrated as a caregiver. How in the world am I to have the time to get out, to take a yoga class, see my doctor, or sit and relax? None of this makes my kid any easier to take care of. It doesn't take a single thing off of my very full plate. Reach out for resources sounds like a time-intensive search. Does anyone realize how impossible these can seem when you're a 24/7 caregiver? Well, people know it's hard. That's why they work so hard to develop tools and resources for caregivers to use. Knowing where to start can be an issue. There are a lot of resources and lots of places to find them. Some of you have become expert Googlers, but if you need a place to start, I'll put a suggestion in the chat box. I remember some other advice my caregiving peer mentor also gave me when my son was young. She said I needed to look into respite services. Respite? I'd never heard of such a thing. Respite is the opportunity created when someone else takes over care temporarily. I will tell you, it was so hard initially, but I acted on her advice. I started using respite regularly. Some of it was provided through respite programs. Some I arranged with family and friends, but After all of our stress change as new parents of a child with lifelong disabilities, it was an investment in my marriage, in my relationship with my other children, a chance to be a family again, as well as an opportunity to take care of myself. And that's why I'm such a proponent of respite even today. It's almost necessary to have respite in place in order to follow these recommendations by the CDC. If respite is a new term or concept for you, I'm going to put a resource and a video link in the chat. Some recent data on respite shows the demand for respite increases as some things start to pile up. Remember our list of change stress? So this chart reflects the care burden placed on the shoulders of caregivers. The impact of caregiving on the life of caregivers, on the life of that caregiver show the increase or more need for respite. That's that green line on an upward trend. When caregiving takes away more and more time for self, time with family and friends, time for enjoyable activities that would refresh and revive them. The bottom, those bars on the bottom show the pile up effect of no time for self, no social connections, no help with care, no choice in activities, and seeing relationships hurt because of caregiving demands. Caregivers expressed real longings when they were asked the following questions. What would you do if you had a break from caregiving? And who would you spend time with during a break from caregiving? Think about it. What activities have you discontinued because of caregiving? Using respite to restore these activities or find new ones is the most beneficial purpose of respite. I have a link to the final report of the Respite RX pilot program that finished last year. Some of you have expressed interest in getting that report. So here it is, hot off the presses. Marcia, do you have that link? We'll have you put that in there. No? Okay, well then I will try. Let's see if I can do it.
Yep.
Of course, if I knew how to do all this stuff very well, that would help. Oh, that's because I'm over here. See, I'm looking at the wrong screen. I apologize. Hold on.
You're doing great here, navigating through all the technology, Cheryl. No problem.
All right, here it is.
Thank you.
All right. And that's our Nevada caregivers in that report. Okay, so what do caregivers need now? So as you're thinking about those activities that maybe you've discontinued due to caregiving, does that mean you can't get some of those activities back now? If you knew it was a priority for getting through your year of change stress, what would it take to gain some of these things back? And how do we gain these things? How do we gain things that make us feel good about who we are? And what keeps us connected? What gives us some control over our lives? Do we have a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning in our lives? How do we stay resilient? So let me recommend something. Routines. We need to balance change stress with routines. Think about it. Exercise is a routine. Date night with your spouse needs to be a routine. Lunch dates with friends need to be routine. Routines are calming, comforting, and predictable. Routines help us know what is going to happen. Like even after this event ends, you will likely find yourself falling back into a routine, which is a sequence of actions regularly followed. that if your older routines are not allowing for like rejuvenation or leaving you feeling less stressed, you need some new ones. And so we need to balance change stress with routines. I once knew a mom whose daughter required frequent visits to the emergency room because of her seizure disorder. It was stressing out the whole family because it was always unexpected. So she made plans for the unexpected. They had a go bag with activities ready for long ER visits. They made plans with family and friends for rides and support so that, Cub Scout meetings and soccer practice could go forward uninterrupted. It was also an opportunity for some overnighters with families, their friends, or with grandparents. Once they made ER visits routine, there was a lot less stress. Freezer dinners were prepared and stored for those unexpected occasions. They'd use their visit to socially connect with nurses and doctors they now knew on a first name basis. And during their visit, they'd be prepared. They'd handle the forms or the reading material that they never had time to sit down at home and do. And instead of letting what they couldn't control disrupt everything in their lives, they took back a little control to make challenging circumstances a little less stressful for them. So think about what you've done this past year to develop some new routines. I mean, even Zoom events are routine now anymore, right? Aren't they? We've gotten so used to getting together in new ways. So we're going to get you busy here talking a little bit about some things. When we talk about stress reduction, there are things we can do in the very moment we recognize we're stressed to get some relief. And maybe some of you have even found some silver linings to COVID and the changes it's caused. I've had caregivers tell me that they're so glad they don't have to worry about getting mom in the car over to the doctor's office, that the Zoom meetings really work just perfect for that. Excuse me. But think about those changes that have been made. And what are you doing to reduce your stress in the moment? Put your answers in chat, and all your thoughts and suggestions are welcome. But let's think about and discuss some stress relievers we've employed. And I'm going to start off today with a social media post I recently received from a friend. It was a simple reminder, and by just doing that, I realized I was carrying a lot of stress in my body, and just letting it go for a moment brought some immediate relief. So let's hear your wisdom right now. Okay. See somebody talking about volunteering, going to the gym, listening to music. I've heard that. That's another way to have a in the moment kind of thing. Getting outside just to walk the dog. It's amazing how times we run into friends just walking the dog, right? Be able to have a social outlet as well. Gardening, that's getting to be a seasonal thing that we're all kind of getting busy with. And many of you have learned how to take deep breaths, do some mindfulness minutes, that sort of thing. I'm glad some of you are still getting together with friends, having, a chance to visit, have that social connection. I think sometimes, we're just trying to handle whatever's right in front of us. So we can hopefully just get through that bad moment or that challenging moment and have a breather. I like to go into my reading room, which is the bathroom. And I have reading material there that I can enjoy and distress. And it's like, well, here I'm taking a moment for myself, and I'm doing something that I can relax and enjoy for a moment to doing. That seems really brief, but sometimes is how it is. Some of you are really kind of just figuring out what you can take control of, like grabbing takeout food and eating in the car. I think that's just, you know, we've got to handle our stress in certain ways, and that is an easy way to handle dinner. That I can remember as a new mom, I'd have a social worker come to visit our home to evaluate how we were doing in a follow-up, you know, to see how we were handling our stress. And I would have a pile of clothes on the couch, and my kids and all their toys were spread around the floor. I would have nothing for dinner. When my husband would walk in the door at the end of his workday and say, "What's for dinner?" I just wanted to shred him. I really just remember that feeling of, don't ask why I haven't got everything done today. I've been doing therapy. I've been doing whatever I could do. But I always felt like I was on somebody's checklist of, well, you know, I wanted to tell that social worker the clothes on the couch were clean. At least do I get points for that? And be able to just deal with what you can control. Sometimes we need to be realistic about the goals of what we can achieve in a day, and let go of some of the things. I told people, I says, my house is neither clean nor dirty. There are spots of it that are clean, and there are spots that are really dirty. And I haven't gotten to those yet, and they're going to wait for a little while longer. But to have some of those kind of responses when we feel judged, that's what I was feeling. So I'm gonna, I just had some additional resources put in the chat that may help you gain some more ideas on stress reduction, and maybe you'll have a chance to look at those later. There are new resources coming up. COVID, the silver lining of COVID is that a lot more resources on stress management have been developed. So that's one of those things. Okay, so let's review the ways that we can reduce stress. Maybe you were doing many or most of these already. You might know to do these things intuitively, but have not considered them important enough to act on. Maybe someone in your life is struggling to implement these in their lives. So which area is the greatest struggle for you? What haven't you tried? Marcia's got that in the chat, I think, for everyone. To be adaptive and positive. Your attitude influences stress levels for both you and the person you're caring for. I don't know if you have a son like mine, but he almost can read stress on me, and it makes him stressful as well. And if you can go with the flow and avoid fighting the current, that will help both of you stay relaxed. Conversely, getting aggravated or agitated will increase the chances that your person will also. Maybe focus on how to adjust to the situation in a constructive way. Dealing with what you can control. Some things are totally out of your control, such as the coronavirus pandemic. What is in your power to control is how you respond and react to these outside factors. So concentrate on finding solutions that will help make the problem less stressful. Set realistic goals and go slow. Everything cannot be resolved at once, nor does it need to be. Don't hold yourself to unrealistic expectations. Prioritize, set practical goals, do your best to achieve them, and take one day at a time. Sometimes we are so A types. Mind your health, of course. That means that if you're not getting adequate rest, you have a poor diet, lack of exercise, that all is going to exacerbate stress and cause other health problems as well. So as best as you can, make it a priority to get sleep. to eat right, to drink plenty of water and find ways to be active. You cannot provide quality care to a loved one if you don't take care of yourself. And clear and refresh your mind, exercise, yoga, meditating, listening to music, or even, taking some deep breaths can all help relax the mind and reduce stress. And so find something that works for you and do it regularly. Sharing your feelings. I was grateful for that peer mentor mom that kind of talked to me when I was going through a whole wide range of emotions. Disconnecting from your social structure and staying bottled up just is going to increase your stress. So whether it's with a loved one, a trusted friend, or a professional, don't be reluctant to talk about your stress, because that can actually help relieve it. So I've got a challenge here that we'll put to try to add one new stress reducing strategy in your life. And I see that some of you are putting some ideas in the chat. And maybe here at the end, you can just tell us, recognizing what we need to do is one thing. Acting on it is what's important. And so looking at this list, think about what you're going to work on. What new stress reducing strategy are you going to work on? Just pick one. And if you haven't yet, put it in the chat and share it with us. We'd love to hear what your plans are. Well, good. I'm glad some of you are taking care of your health. This has been a rough year for that. Trying to stay positive is hard. And that's a lot of demand on me as well. My son reads negative very quickly. And so trying to be positive keeps me less stressed because I don't have him freaking out. So that is really an important thing to do. And just to say, are we okay? I often have a little conversation with him. Everything's fine. We're going to go through our list. Remember, routines help to balance, change stress. And when he's feeling it, we go through the list. We have him go over the list of the day and what's coming up next, and call dad to make sure that he knows that dad knows what the plan is for the day. And then he can go forward a little bit less stressful. Okay. All right. So we are here at the end. I don't have any more slides. Does anyone have some thoughts of what they would like to add to our conversation? Any thoughts about what you've learned about stress and managing it that you would be willing to share?
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself, raise your hand, and Cheryl, you can.
Cheryl, I just have to say, I am loving the telling people that parts of my house are clean and parts are dirty. So if I ever feel like my house is a mess, I know parts of them are clean. So thank you for that. But
yeah,
I just wanted to say that was wonderful.
Has anyone done a stress survey before? No? You have? Okay, we've got a few people who've raised their hands. It's an interesting exercise. I feel like that is something that I review with people that I'm working with, is just recognizing all the change that they're experiencing in their life, because we think we're supposed to handle everything without experiencing stress. And it's like, what made you think you could handle all these changes without feeling stress? Now, we don't want to live there. We don't want to live with that stress, but I don't know, giving myself a year just to adjust is comforting to me, to say, okay, I'm going to be feeling this different for about a year, and that I should see that fall away, hopefully, as I find my new normal. And many of you as caregivers know what new normal means. You just realize that things are not going to go back to exactly the way they were before, but then you find that what is that poem that is Life in Holland or something like that? I can remember that you find the new things, the silver linings of your new experience. And I found a whole new career out of it, actually. When my son was 2, that was when I was working at the university on caregiver peer mentoring activities and doing some leadership development and different things over the years. And it's like, I would have never found this particular career path had it not been for my son. Now, my parents are only going to be here, maybe, here they're in their declining years. And I may only have that stress for a period of time of my life. And I want to do it right. But I tell them, I says, you're the ones teaching me how to age, how to do it right. As you figure it out, you share those learning lessons with me and what I can do to help you, because I've never done that before. I've never gotten to an age above you. And so if you can teach me what you're experiencing and what you're feeling and what your frustrations are, and that sense of what they feel like they've lost, and if I can help to find them some other solutions and new routines. The new routine for them is that they have a friend who calls them on Friday before she goes shopping and asks them what they need to have picked up. And so they see a friend. A friend stops by and visits with them, and they have that social outlet in an isolated world that they've lived in, and yet they still get their groceries, and it's been a nice solution to the particular challenges of the day. So have any of you come up with that? Somebody says, a compound caregiver, I realize that's what I've become. Welcome to the crowd. Very much so, yeah. We are, and we also should be looking at our neighbors and our friends, and there's, circumstances. If we can figure out how to help each other through stressful times, I think we'll be blessing other people's lives as well. That's sometimes one of the roles I think I've had in my career, is that I get to talk to other caregivers and hear their stresses. And if only that they are heard, that somebody cares about them and how they're doing in their life, that is a huge stress reliever. And I think, okay, that didn't require anything really on my part, but just to be present, be there for them.
Cheryl, I think Todd was going to make a comment.
Okay,
Go
ahead, Todd.
Sure. Actually, I was going to expand on that, and I'm having trouble talking. I had 2 crowns done this morning, so excuse me.
Well, we're glad you're talking it all then.
But the compound caregiver has really taken on, as we sat here, a meaning to me, as I realized I have a real role. I teach yoga for stress, anxiety, PTSD, and I'm a 24/7 caregiver. Mm-hmm. And in the last 2 weeks, I've had to work as a crisis intervention counselor with family and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and things that have really compounded, as that word, as I'm looking at it, where I had to really take on that role and accept that role and use all these teachings and all these tools that I have learned to be a compound caregiver as I looked at it. And it's been an extreme energy. And I know it's a lot of that going on everywhere with the isolation and the COVID virus, that I'm seeing it now with my great-grandkids and trouble with mental health and just tremendous stresses that I wouldn't have known about if it hadn't hit so close to home. And I imagine it's out there and rampant in society today amongst these kids that are 14, 15, 16, and 17 years old that will be needing caregiving because they're missing so much in life right now. So caregiving is going to take on a whole new meaning.
This is sometimes true, I think, of a lot of our younger people, their resiliency, that ability to have some toughness in trying circumstances, that they haven't been through trying circumstances that have prepared them for this. And so they've been hit a sledgehammer hit on their own psyches and their own well-being that is obviously impacting our society very much. So, and so, you know, it's the question: do you have conversations as a family of, is this a hard thing? Can you get through it? Can we get through it together? And, you know, we do hard things. Caregivers do hard things. And be able to say, man, we have done other hard things before. Can we handle the next one? And can we work on it together and figure out how to get through this together? Because it is hard. That is not taking away their reality. It's to try to develop the resiliency to go through other trying circumstances in their lives and not feel like, I mean, I don't know, would it be helpful, do you think, for them to know that what they're feeling is really, really normal, that of the changes that they're experiencing, that this stress is really what everyone's feeling, the change stress, and just have them recognize it and say, okay, that's a lot of change that we're dealing with, and say, now, you know, give yourself time to recover. You've just been hit with a sledgehammer of change. So what are you going to do? Are you going to be kind to yourself? Are you going to be able to allow yourself a little bit of recovery time, and give ourselves permission to have that break? I really love Respite as a resource, because caregivers typically don't allow themselves that break. If they can arrange it with family or friends, you know, a 15-minute walk around the block is maybe all they can manage, but to at least take that, make that a routine, and help to balance all that change stress. Marta?
Hi, Cheryl. Hi, everyone. So just to expound on what you are talking about right now, when I was caregiving for my father, that was a huge deal. The smallest things can really, really be helpful when you're caregiving 24/7 and you just feel that stress. And so going back to when I was talking about Respite, you know, before I was caregiving for my dad, I would tell people to make a list of things that other people could do when somebody said, hey, is there anything that I can do for you? Because your initial reaction is to say, no, I'm fine. I can't even think about it right now, or whatever, you know, so you just kind of blow them off. And if you have a list handy that has some things that you've thought about that other people could do, it's really nice to have that kind of in your back pocket for when somebody does ask the question. You don't have that initial response of, I can't even think about that right now. You have a response of, yes, you can go grocery shopping, or yes, I need a meal for the next, you know, can you bring something over next Tuesday night because we have a doctor's appointment, whatever. Just kind of have a list or things in mind already, you know, be a little planful about it, so that when you are asked, you can say, this is what I'd like.
I pulled that on one of my son's friends, and they were trying to be helpful and say, you know, if you ever need anything. And I said, yes, here's $100. Eric needs a new outfit. Take him to the store and find something that is peer appropriate, so it doesn't look like his mother's dressing him all the time. And the kid was a little bit shocked, but they had a great time out picking out an outfit, you know, a shirt and some pants, and come home and show me what they had done. I got Eric out of my hair. And so I had a few minutes to have to myself, and I put that friend right to work, and he was a little shocked, but he's asked again since then, you know, does Eric need to go shopping again? I was like, man, you just saved my butt that day. And I felt bad about doing that to him, but you know, sometimes you need to take care of those opportunities and just say, hey, listen, you offered, here's what I need. And so that was one time that I really took them up on it. So Great. Anyone else? We've got just a few minutes before we close today. Was this helpful in any way to anyone who is joining us today? Or helpful, do you think that you can share it with somebody else? Marta, you still got your hand or your thumb up. Okay. Got it. Sorry.
I'm giving you a thumbs up, Cheryl. It's
Okay, I thought maybe you were raising your hand again. Okay. All right.
Cheryl, would you like to just give us a few last thoughts and then we'll
Did you
go to
put
announcements?
my contact information in the chat if you didn't do that already, Marcia? And then I think I haven't been monitoring the chat, but yeah, it is nice to know we're not alone. We're all dealing with a little bit of distress, and I'm grateful that some of you maybe have felt like at least we got to talk about it. That is one of the things that we can know about sharing our feelings and having some stress reduction as a result. Maybe some of you actually follow that friend's advice about taking a deep breath and relaxing and letting your shoulders drop and seeing what kind of stress you've got in your body and taking a deep breath and letting it out slowly, and realize that you're holding yourself really tight, that you're stressing yourself or you're stressing your body, and be able to say, hey, I don't need to do that. I can let that go this moment. Be able to relax.
Well, Cheryl, thank you very much for being with us today. And thanks for being on the team of Nevada Caregiver Coalition. I'd also like to just thank real quickly Marsha O'Malley with Mindful Media Services for her technical assistance on our meeting today. We have a great committee working together to plan all of our upcoming conversations with caregivers, including Lisa Davis from Renown Health, Cheryl Dannell from Nevada Lifespan Respite Care Coalition and the Nevada Aging and Disability Services Division, and Riley Franco with AARP. We are pleased to announce that our next conversations with caregivers will be May 17th at 1 p.m. And in celebration of older Americans, have an attorney for the elder and disability rights, talking about the continuum of legal support for decision-making that is available to an aging and or disabled person in Nevada. So if you have questions about guardianships and advanced directives and supported decision-making, we will be covering all those topics next month. All of our conversations are held the third Monday of the month at 1 p.m. So mark your calendars. This is a monthly occurrence. And if you have ideas for topics that you'd like to hear, we'd sure love to hear them. Feel free to put them in the chat or contact us through our website or Facebook page. And we'll look for speakers on those topics. We record all our events and make the recording available to the public shortly after each presentation. Everyone here today will receive a follow-up email from our chair, Deanna Hearn. Thank you, Deanna, with information to access the recording and details about our next conversations with caregivers. So we are so happy that you took some time to be with us today. We hope you'll take time to take care of yourselves as caregivers, and we look forward to seeing you in May. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye. Have a good afternoon.